So, exciting topic today. We're going to talk about cover letters. Everyone loves cover letters. I know people love to write them and read them. I'm just kidding. I know this is a topic that is it's creates a lot of stress for people. You all have so much going on, and some of you might be writing cover letters a little bit down the road. Some of you might be anxious to start writing them because you're going to something early like a national career fair. But I know cover letters create a lot of stress for people just because, maybe there's some exceptions to this, but generally I think people don't love to sit down the blank Word doc and start writing. So the goal of this workshop is to kind of break down the cover letters, the process, what should be in them, and try to create more of a formula for you all just to make it feel a little less stressful and easier to fit into what I know are already really busy days. So I just wanted to point out too that I think it's a lot easier sometimes just to see an example of something, to hear an example of something, to see an example of something. So I did want to point out that in Career Space, there's a whole section on cover letters. So you can look at that anytime. And I will, throughout this, we have several examples kind of sprinkled in of the different things we're going to talk about. So I guess too, I'll take a step back. And for those I haven't met, I'm Amanda Fend. I'm one of the coaches in the Career Center. I've actually met with several of you already to do a resume review or talk over the summer. So it's great to see you all again. And also joining me is Courtney Fain. Courtney, do you want to introduce yourself? I'll give you a chance to.
Hi, I'm Courtney. A lot of y'all look familiar as well. And I work in the CMC, and I'll help monitor chat questions as I can. If you don't feel comfortable popping in on video, or if I can help just on the side, please know that I'm here. But just wanted to join in and listen. Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah, thanks, Courtney. And then I can't scroll through, but we may have some peer coaches joining. I think many of you have, or hopefully all of you have heard from your peer coach or already talked to them. But if there's a peer coach on here, I can't look through all the people. Feel free to unmute yourself now and say hello. And they might be saving all their energy for the week ahead and all the meetings they'll have with you. So you have Courtney and I, and we will have lots of insight to share. And then with cover letters, I'll just add to that your CMC coach, the employer and recruiting team, your peer coach, we are all here to help you be a resource on your cover letters. And obviously you can have lots of informal sources of reviewing and help with your classmates. And I know people often turn to their family and friends as well. So the more resources you have, the better. So why write a cover letter? Basically, just move the screen, sorry. Basically, there's three really main things. That one, it's really easy to apply to things like the easy button, just apply. And companies on the receiving end of those, they really want to know that you actually are interested in that role, that you didn't, and I guess to the second point, you didn't just look through Indeed.com, which many of you will do, and just kind of look around oh, that looks interesting, I guess I'll apply. They want to at least feel like you really are interested in that role. You've taken the time to apply and tailor your resume and be really thoughtful about it. And the cover letter is a way to do that. And we'll talk about how to do that in there. But are you going to do that every single time you apply to a job? No way. I hope you don't spend an hour every time you apply to a job on a cover letter, but there's some small things you can do to really tailor a cover letter and really stand out to the company and make them feel like, oh, this person really knows what they're talking about. They've really spent time thinking about us and they want to be here. And then the other thing is just to show specifically, it's a chance to bring your resume to life and be really specific about what from your background would allow you to add value to their company in that role. So the rest of this presentation are really 10 things that we think are important to think about when you're writing a cover letter. So cover letter is kind of like a date. So if you went on a date with someone and maybe you've all been dating recently and at the start of school, meeting a lot of people, or maybe you had in the past, but when you if you go on a date with someone and you sat down for coffee or dinner or whatever, and that person just started talking launching in, talking about themselves. Like, let me tell you about me. Like, this is what you should know about me and why I'm great. You'd be probably like, whoa, it might be kind of a turnoff. Like, you want to get to know each other, but if someone was just launching into stuff about themselves, it wouldn't be great. So a way to think about a cover letter is similar to that. If you were having that kind of an initial conversation with a date, or it could be just a person you're meeting, and think about it in three kind of pieces that together would create the letter. So the first one is really more of a focus on like them. Like, why do you like that company? Why are you interested in them? Why do you think it would be a good fit? What, how much work have you already done getting to know the company? The first one is like, why like you? The second one, and equally important, and where you're going to put a lot of effort into thinking through how you write it, is really about you. I like you. Here's the things I like about you. The second part is like, here's why you should like me. Basically, here's why I should get an interview and why you'd want me at your company. And the last paragraph is usually pretty short. It's like, okay, like, I like you, you like me, like, let's get together. And truly, if you might have drafts of past cover letters, or a lot of people just sit down and start writing. I would sit down and think, okay, these are the 3 separate sections. And I'm gonna, even putting like 1, 2, 3, if you just want to put a framework, I think thinking about it this way makes it much easier than just starting to like write stuff. So it's a good, easy framework to follow. The second one, this is super short. And I know tons of people have done this. Every year I see lots of, before people have watched this, like people will write this like, dear sir, or like, dear madam. Like, have you ever said that in real life? Probably, maybe if you're in the South, you'd say yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. But like, no, you would not write dear sir, or like, dear, to whom it may concern. I know that feels like a default when you don't know who the person would be or who you're addressing it to, but it's super kind of like generic. Like, did you even take time to think about who you're writing this to? Instead of writing those things, if you know the person, which you will, very likely, if it's a job posting through Owen, there will very likely be a name attached to it, and you will know who that person is, and you can say, dear Miss Smith or dear Mr. Smith. If you don't know who the person is, or if it's like a company, like you just found the job posting on Indeed or somewhere else, you could put like, dear Nike recruiting team or talent acquisition team. Like, just make it a little more specific. Super basic, but there's a lot of like sirs floating around out there, and I think it kind of feels very impersonal, like, and not like a normal thing we would say in our everyday lives. So like I was saying before, in that first paragraph where you're talking about why them, be as specific as possible. So, why is the company awesome? Like, they want to think that you're really enthusiastic and excited about their company. There's going to be tons of people interested in Amazon, or, insert X company. And so you want to stand out by seeming like, I really want to be here. I've done some research. And we'll talk even further in the next few slides about how to do this with specific conversations you've already had. Even if you've not talked to anyone at the company, like this example, this was from a few years ago, but like being really specific about why they liked Amazon. Don't be super generic. Like the examples at the bottom of this slide, like they know they're an industry leader. Or like, if you write something and you look at it and you could sub in like 100 different companies and it would still work, it's too generic. So taking a little bit of time, like I was saying, you're not going to spend tons of time on every cover letter. If you're applying to a job where you're like, I do need to write a cover letter, but I don't have a lot of time to like be super specific and write a ton of stuff, you can do a little bit of research or think through a little bit more, like, why am I specifically interested in this company, and use that in the opening paragraph. Okay, so along those lines, kind of be memorable, or at least like, I have not been a recruiter, so I have not been on the receiving end of hundreds of cover letters, but every year I look at a lot of cover letters and they're pretty boring to read. I mean, I'm happy to do it and I like doing it, but like, if you are a recruiter reading tons of cover letters, they all start to blend together. It gets kind of old. So I think recruiters, and Courtney you probably hear from them all the time, like really appreciate when someone, to me, like this is the paragraph that you're going to tailor the most every time you apply to a job. The about you can often be like very like similar content for lots of different roles, like in the same industry or in the same function, or you have to tailor it a little bit. But this paragraph is where you're going to spend the most time tailoring it. So especially if you've interacted with people, I can't remember if I put it on the next slide, but like you want to be a name dropper. It's a good thing. You don't need to list like, you have to find a balance. You wouldn't, if you talk to like 10 people at Deloitte, I think it would be overboard to list like every single name there. But, you know, you could say like what these people have did, or I've talked to several, after talking to several recent alums, including X and X, comma, which signals like I've talked to a lot, I'm going to name 2 of them, but like now you know I've done a lot of research. So it really just gives them a chance to say like, yes, this person's interest really seems genuine and they've done some of the work. So here are some more examples I just added that I was looking back through, like these are all people's real cover letters. This was an MArch student last year. And I just liked how she named the people, but then like tied that into why she was interested. The next one was an MBA student. Again, like listing some of the people she talked to, and then, you know, tying it again to like her background and interests. It doesn't mean in that like why I like you opening paragraph, it doesn't mean you can't say anything about yourself, but you want to make the focus on them and then why that's relevant. You know, you can say why that's relevant to you. I think this person with the ECG one, I was looking at another one of her cover letters and she mentioned, I think I have another example of hers later, like, you know, with my 12 years of XYZ experience, I think blah, 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 blah. So just being as specific as you can. Now, I will say, now I know I personally work with a lot of brand management students, so this is about brand management, but I'm going to make this point to say that kind of what like the expectation of a cover letter or like the industry norm can differ by function. So that's just something to keep in mind, like what in a consulting or an investment banking recruiter might be kind of hoping to see or expecting to see is probably going to be different than like a brand management recruiter. So these are examples. I know, you know, some I've used that middle one before and people are like, that's so cheesy. And like, you don't be cheesy, you know, or if it feels right to you, like you have to be authentic. And these are very long. So I could see the case for like, these are kind of very long opening paragraphs, but this is brand management. Like, I think you want to be in marketing, like let's make sure you can market yourself and keep me engaged and like have a compelling letter. And so I think these are past alums who wrote these, and I know they all got interviews with these companies or ended up at them. And I think it's just like for brand management, they're expecting a little like, tell me a story. Would a consulting recruiter be like, please tell me a story about like your passion for consulting? Like, I mean, if that's authentic to you, sure. But like, I don't really think they're looking for someone to talk about brands and their passion for them. So I just give this example. This is obviously for brand management, just to say like, and this goes for everything in recruiting, your resume, the additional section, kind of what they're looking for. The norms might be a little bit different. And so that's a great thing to talk to your CMC coach about, your peer coach about, alums, as you like go to info sessions, try to gauge like what is the norm in recruiting, what would they really be looking for. So I said this before, but yes, be a name dropper. It doesn't have to be like 5 names. Like it could be that you heard someone speak. It could be like that you read, you know, if it's an actual person you've networked with, that's great. Definitely mention that. Or it could be like someone I was talking to said that they read a story on Vanderbilt, like in the newsroom, like an alum was interviewed for an article and they read it and it really helped them decide like, that's the thing I want to do. If they were applying to that person's company, like that would be a great thing to mention there. It doesn't have to be like a personal networking thing you had. It could just be, you know, something somebody wrote at the company or some other connection you had. So you want to weave those into the first paragraph there. Also super basic, like the dear sir, for anything, whether it's through Owen, like a job posting that comes through our system, or it's just like out in the world, on Nike's recruiting page, make sure you reference the specific job, because while the on campus, like the things through Owen, is definitely very organized, thanks to the team and all the processes in place. Like, if McKesson had posted that job at Owen and Owen students all applied, they would get at the end of when the application period closed, they would get a book of all the cover letters and resumes together, and they could look through them. They might get that book, and then they might hand it to someone to review them all, and that person like sets them on their desk and loses like the order of things. And if you don't have the job posting in your cover letter and it gets separated, they're not going to know who you are. And that might be especially true when you apply just in like what feels like the black hole of a company's job board or at National Black. You just want to make sure that if that was a standalone piece of paper, somebody would know what you were talking about. And this is really about that second section. And I'll also say, if you guys have any questions, feel free to stop me anytime. Just unmute yourself and speak, or you can put something in the chat. This is a really important section, because what I always tell students is like, recruiters don't care about your background, your whole background. They don't care. They're only going to care about things in your background that are relevant to them, either things in your background or things about you or your passion or your skills or specific factors and things about you that are relevant to the job that they're looking for. And this is really your chance to tell that story and bring it to life. Like, I would say probably 90% of the time when someone's reading your cover letter, they probably have your resume next to it. And so they've already seen, I can see what you've done. But now I want to hear it in your own words. Now, when I've been doing resume reviews with people, I've been saying, like, I've obviously looked at your resume, but like, tell me in your own words. Like, I can read, but I want to hear from you. Like, what was most relevant about those jobs? Like, why did you move on to that next thing? Like, what made you want to get your MBA? And obviously it really helps. I get like an entirely different picture when I hear people tell their story. A cover letter is like the step before that, where probably someone's seen your resume and now they're like, okay, what does this person have to say on this paper? So this is your chance to really highlight to them the things that you want them to take away from that document. So again, it's bringing like the story, it's your chance to bring that to life. So, and along those veins, don't write a novel. If you got these 3 cover letters, probably, and I know I was saying those other paragraphs are getting a little bit long. Like, if I saw that one on the right, I'd be like, it's like too much. It's the same, I'm sure Kimberly Pace has, or will talk about that. It's like with email communications or anything. Like, if you get an email from someone, it's just like huge paragraphs. You're like, you're probably like, I'll set that aside and get to it later. When I get an email, if it's a lot of information and someone's like, here's blah, 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 and then like bullets, I'm like, great. Like, it's much easier to read and for me to digest. And similarly on the left side, you want to make sure you're getting it's like precious real estate, your resume and a cover letter. It's like, what is the maximum amount of things you can say that's not overwhelming, and what's the best way to say them? So I personally, on the left side, there's kind of the paragraph form, which is totally fine. And you can see that form, the one that's in the middle with the 3 bullets. That is another great way to, one, make it just feel really easy for someone. Like, I can digest this. Like, someone's telling me 3 things in there. Now they're cueing me to like know that there's 3 things I'm looking for, and now let me read about them. It also really lets people, and I'll have examples on the next slides, it really lets people, like, whatever the main points you want them to take away, it's like in their face. Like, I might not even read them. I'll be like, this person's telling me 3 things about them. Like, I guess this must be true because they're going into detail in these bullets. I mean, I'm sure people will read them, but it just makes it really easy for people to take in the information you're giving them. So here's an example. And I think, and Courtney, I'm curious what you think, because I was going back just to find some examples. Like, I added this one earlier. And I would say, like, looking at all the cover letters I've looked at, maybe like 70% have these 3 bullets and 30% were just like the paragraphs, which is totally fine. But I feel like there's this movement, more and more students find this like an easier way to think through their information and relay it to people. Courtney, what do you look at tons of cover letters, I know, with companies. Do you think like they have a preference, or?
I think when you pull it out into bullets, there has to be a real reason to break it down like this, and because it really gives you more space to talk. So it's really smart if you're hitting 3 main points that you saw reflected in the job posting that you can talk about. So let's say they talked about consumer-centric mindset, or they said teamwork or collaboration, or they're a company that focuses on innovation. That's definitely your time to build on those and highlight them in a cover letter. I think there are certainly times where you can keep things shorter. If you're not pulling out directives from the job posting, or if it's a more succinct, sometimes you'll just feel you don't need to go into that much detail. But I do see more and more, it's organized for the person writing it, and it's also more organized for the person reviewing it. As Amanda was saying, it's not only high dollar real estate, but it's time. You probably have 30 seconds for a recruiter to review the resume. And whether they do this before or after, you're going to add in another maybe 20 seconds. So if you're able to concisely mention things in one paragraph with some buzzwords, great, or break it out into these bullets and include those buzzwords. So I think both work, to Amanda's point. It just really depends. It depends, the MBA answer. Amanda, I have 2 questions since I'm talking. Could I ask them from students? Okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Is there a point at which your cover letter is too short or has too much white space?
I would say yes. And not, usually I say it depends. You have a page. I would definitely, and I don't think anyone would go over a page, but you have a page. So I think more so, I think people struggle with their resume sometimes. Like if they don't have as much work experience, or like they were doing something, they were like, if there's only so much I can say. I know that's an issue sometimes with resumes, but everyone can, it's like you're telling the story about your work experience. You're not just saying, here's like my 1 year of work experience. So I feel like you should be able to, elaborate on whether it's the 3 bullets or examples you're sharing in the paragraphs. And it doesn't have to be only like I was saying, it's not just what's on your resume. Like you might end up, especially for people who have less work experience, like one of these bullets could be about, and I've seen students do this. They're applying to like a role at like a beer company, and like that, or like, Molson Coors. So one of the bullets was like their passion for the beverage industry, and talking about like projects they'd worked on, and like their passion for like why they were passionate about it. And so and I don't know like why someone might feel like they have like more white space, but I would say you could probably, and that's something you could work on with your peer coach or your CMC coach, like thinking through like, well, what else could I say about this, or what is missing that we could help you brainstorm to kind of fill it out. But I think like back to the visual, how it looks visually, like that one on the far left, I think anyone who's at Owen would be able to come up with enough to fill out something like that. So I would say like that would be like the minimum length I would probably visually recommend. But
yeah, and to your point, Amanda, so you're building off of buzzwords, certainly, but just as we mentioned the additional section that we include at the bottom of the resume, this is another time to highlight sort of your personality. When I look at healthcare resumes or healthcare cover letters, which I see those more than marketing, that's Amanda's your marketing guru. They want experience, but also healthcare companies, hospitals, all that realm want passion. So this is your chance to pull from the bullets on your resume and create that story about why you're passionate, why you want to do a career switch. For consulting, it's why do you solve problems, or how have you creatively looked at problems before? That's not always as easy to put into a bullet in a resume. So the creative process and the process that allows a recruiter to have a more memorable moment with you can happen on those cover letters. So just an anecdote. And then one other question was, how often do companies read your entire cover letter, or do they typically just glance at the first paragraph?
And that's one where I would say it depends. I'll never forget these two alums from DaVita, and actually neither is still there, but they were at Owen for full-time recruiting. So there was maybe like, they were interviewing second-year students for full-time roles. And they came in and literally had brought all the cover letters and like highlighted them and made notes. And they were like, for their own sake, I guess they'd done that process to see who they should interview, but then they were like giving feedback on them. Like they were all up in those cover letters. And I was like, wow, that's a lot. But then I think on the other hand, you don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are recruiters, especially when there's a lot of applications coming in. So for like a National Black type conference, or if you're just applying to like Amazon or Nike or like companies where consulting firms, like there's just a lot, CPG companies, a lot of applications coming in, like they're probably glancing really quickly. And that's why I think that sometimes, or anytime, but in those situations, like the 3 bullets kind of makes it really easy for them. Like someone asked me to look at their cover letter the other day, and I was like, it just takes me a minute. Like, I'm thinking as the reader, what is this person telling me? What do they want me to take away from this? And if it's sentences, like, just obviously it's sentences, but like sentences about like what they did and from their past experience, it's more work for me to like decipher, like, what is this key takeaway from this story about like working on the, operations line at the factory? Like, I have to really think about it, versus the one with the bullets. Like, you're telling me this is what I'm about to tell you about. And before I even read them, like I said, I might be like, I'm a brand recruiter, I'm healthcare. I'm like, yep, we need that. Yep, we need that. Okay, cool. This person knows what we need and they apparently have it. I guess I'll quickly scan these, or not, but like they've obviously know enough about us in this role to highlight exactly what we need. So I think unfortunately you don't know. And so I always say, first of all, I would err on having a cover letter, because if there's 100 applications, and I've heard some recruiters go through like these scenarios, like if there were 100 people that apply and only 50 had a cover letter, they might just immediately, they're looking for reasons to take people out because it's so much work to identify people. So they might just immediately say, well, these people didn't write a cover letter, they must not be that serious. And then I would say, like, if especially if it's a job you really care about, obviously, like, spend more time thinking through the opening and all of those things, but you're probably going to have times where you prioritize it. It's lower on your priority list, and you're just going to tailor it slightly to make it relevant. But those are great questions. Feel free to keep them coming. So I showed this one about us from a student. Here is another one. Just kind of to show how people kind of introduce that. So in the cover letter, there would have been an opening paragraph about why they liked Nissan. And then they actually had kind of a longer intro to like, and here's what I bring, the 3 bullets, but they kind of intro that and then have their 3 bullets, and then they wrapped it up about wanting to interview. The other last thing I'll say about the 3 bullets is that when students do that, obviously not every job is going to have like the exact same 3 bullets. Like you're not going to have the same things that are relevant for everything. So one thing that's kind of helpful about the bullets is like, you might do it for one job. And then when you go to a different role or a different industry, you might be like, well, this one looks like these 2 things are still relevant, but like they really need someone with like analytical problem solving. So I'm going to sub out this one bullet and add this bullet in. And you might do that over time. So you end up with kind of like a bank of different bullets. So when you get to a job, you're like, what 3 things are most relevant? Like, oh, I have that one, I have that one, I have that one. This combination works best. So I think that's helpful sometimes for students, because you're going to be applying to a lot of different jobs over your 2 years, probably, or you might apply to one and be done. But that can be helpful to kind of get up that reserve of different examples. So 9, you know, ask, this is the last paragraph and it's really short and sweet. I don't think anyone needs to ever include their, you know, if you'd like to if you need more information, please feel free to reach out to me at, and they put their phone number and email. Like, if hopefully you have that in your header, and if they want to reach out to you, they will look up, find your email and reach out to you. So you don't need to waste the precious space on the bottom, reiterating that. But very short, just like, I like you, you like me, like let's get to this next step, whatever that is, if it's on campus or it might be at something like National Black, or just hoping to talk to them. And then this seems so obvious, but I can't tell you how important it is. And I bolded and put in red company because I think especially last year, and Courtney, you can correct me in a second if I'm wrong, but there were a lot of cover letters where people were using the same format, you know, save as, update it, and they left the wrong company, which you think, oh my gosh, I would never do that. But a lot of people did it. Am I right, Courtney? And am I making that up? I feel like that happened a lot, especially recently.
I'm like rubbing my temples as you say that. Yes, I don't know. I think things must have just gotten crazy, and things do get crazy for a certain month and a half. And we did see a lot of hiccups in this area. And so you'll see like there's a rise in the season of applications, and you just want to give yourself extra time to review everything right before you upload, because that happens for sure.
Yeah, it happens. I remember I did this workshop with a couple of peer coaches one year, and one of the peer coaches was like, yes, that was me. I did it like a few times last year by accident, and then you're out. I mean, unless they don't notice. Like, that to me is a big one where companies, like, you'd have to be like really special for them to say, I'll let that pass, because that's a big typo. But then there's all kinds of things, you know, that you might not catch. So having someone in the CMC or your peer coach or friends and family review it also, like, the more eyes, the better, because you don't want to go through all that work and then be dinged for something that was like, obviously you didn't need to do and you're capable of not doing. So that was it. So I hope like that broke it down a little bit, because I know it feels like most people, unless you were like an English major and love writing and business writing, most people I've heard from just don't love writing cover letters, but it can be a lot easier if you kind of break it down. And really, like, that middle paragraph, which can be daunting, like, what am I gonna say about myself? People have a hard time talking about themselves. Like, tie it to the job, like print out the job description, highlight what are the top 3 things they're looking for, and make sure that if you know, you can obviously use those bullets we talked about. And if you don't, that's fine. But maybe you want to write it and give it to someone and say, what do you think the 3 main takeaways would be? You want to make sure that what you're writing about yourself, what you're highlighting about yourself, is what a recruiter would want to see. So on that note, I'm going to stop recording it.